Hi and welcome to CSM TAC. I'm Peter Briggs and this is part 2 of my interview with Luther Blissett. Please like, comment and share on any of the videos that I've uploaded. The more comments the better. I will try to answer them as honestly and as positively as I possibly can. All help would be much appreciated. Thank you. Hi and welcome to the second part of our interview with Luther Blissett. In this video, Luther will be talking to us about post-football, against his fight against racism within the game and his thoughts on how the game is moving forward for young players. So Luther, can we just go back to, you've just finished playing football, you've retired, you've gone to coach at your former club Watford, and you're working alongside your long-term mentor, Graham Taylor. Can you just explain how that transition worked for you, especially when you were going back to a football club where you probably played with a number of those players previously? So how did that work for you?
The one thing about that, because I left in '93 and then I started there in '96-7. In those 3 and whatever years, there's been a big turnaround at clubs, especially when clubs are going up and down, or struggling. Then you get a big turnaround of players. So there was 1 or 2 of the lads were still there, but generally there was a new crop of players there. And I was working in the marketing department. I was watching the games anyway at the weekend, so I knew what they were doing when I wasn't playing myself. Because those 2 years I was playing at Fakenham Town in Norfolk every Saturday and sometimes midweek and whatever I'd be playing. So I would watch whatever games I could, so I knew what was going on. And so when I started there, it was not such a surprise, and my main thing was just to try and get, I suppose, so the players would enjoy their training sessions, because you had so many games to go to the end of the season, and it was a case of what can you really do to change the position they're in. But you just try and make them enjoy every day, and hopefully that enjoyment slings over, and that comes with your results. And we didn't quite do it. We still went down by the odd point or so by the end. But we were soon back up and ended up back in the Premier League within sort of 3 years. So Graham had fulfilled everything that he went there to do. So for me, the break helped, because then when I came back, I came in and just came in as a coach, which is which sometimes a lot easier. And the fact that your stuff and you're working with somebody also that knows it made it a lot easier. It made that transition a lot easier for myself and others.
I've got a question here from a guy called Luke Fulham. He's one of my friends that served with me in the British Army. He's now in the Australian Army, and he's a massive Watford fan, even though his last name is Fulham. He has asked a question, and I'm going to read this. So yourself and John Barnes are trailblazers. This is exact words, trailblazers at Watford, dealing with a wealth of issues regarding ethnicity in sport. How did you personally overcome these challenges? And where do you think leaders are going to go forward, and how they should weigh their efforts to ensure progress in cultural diversity?
Well, the first thing is, as I said, following the example of the likes of Pele and Muhammad Ali and George Best, the way they dealt with all the adverse things that happened in their life as well as career. That sort of helped. But also the example of 1 or 2 people that didn't handle it in the right way. And there were certain players that that before my time had got into the game and they fell away, because when the things of racism and confrontation that happened with that, they dealt with in maybe wanting to stand up to it face to face in a more aggressive way than I did, because I saw what happened with them and the way they did it. For me, a simple scenario is somebody banging on a door. People say, for Christ's sake, they take no notice after a while, because it becomes a noise. Whereas if you do it quietly, I think people will at least give you the opportunity to say or show them what you can do. So I chose that route to go with it, rather than the one being, because they find it difficult, because they're already in a position where they think, you being black, you're different, and they don't understand your culture, where you're coming from, and what you're all about. Because yes, we are different on the outside and the way we behave and whatever. So you have to give people time, and that time is not afforded to you, because everybody's always saying results are more important. And it's not the case that we have to work hand in hand if it's going to work for me. So I had to find a way that suited me, and it was a case of when things happen, you literally have to just count to 10 and let that subside in you, so you didn't just react, because reacting was always the issue with things. So that really was what I did. So you dealt with situations where opposition players would be calling your names and be giving you all sorts of abuse and kicking you all over the place. And it was a case of just abiding your time, when you would then maybe give them a little tap to say, look, I'm not going to stand for this much longer, and it will come to a case where, it will come to a point and tackle with me or you, and I trust you now. It is not going to be me that's going on. Because you've had to deal with that all your life, but they're not aware of that because they just see you now for who you are. And so you have to stamp your authority in that way, but in a quiet way. So that's something I had to do. Then John sort of joined from 1980-81 time, was when John arrived. And when he arrived, things were much better by that time from when I started. There's been a big improvement, no different to when the likes of Clyde Best started, and that, and it got better as years, because people got used to seeing you out there, and yes, you still got, but it was not to the level that when you first walked out on the pitch. So things improved, and John was able to almost fit in and go on without a major problem. I think that iconic photograph of him kicking the banana off the pitch, it's only a major issue because he's wearing a Liverpool shirt. That's why it's become such an iconic picture. But that sort of thing, throwing bananas and stuff at the pitch, I've been doing that since year dot when I started playing. So that was because he's wearing that Liverpool shirt. Liverpool were a big club, so it's obviously makes it a much bigger thing. And John he might even have been their very first, or very close to one of their very first black footballers that played for them. I think it was Gailey played for them first. I think Howard Gale did. Not Howard. I think he did. I think Gailey played for them first. On that front, so it had not been something. I mean, Merseyside, I've not really seen any black players in the blue or the red in that period of time. So yes, it was a big thing, and certain people did what they did, but his ability and everything won them over, and you never saw it with the opposition that did it. It would never happen against the home fans. So again, so John didn't have to deal with quite as much, but yes, he still had to deal with it, and his upbringing and whatever that helped. He had family and people around him, which made that easier for him to deal with when it happened. Plus, the dressing room was very good, also to help anybody out with that.
So, how was it playing with John?
Playing with John was great because he did things that people just couldn't believe. For example, it's on the big match. This game was on, and Brian Moore was doing the commentary. We're playing Norwich City at home. Mel Donaghy, who had been at Manchester United and whatever else, was now playing, or was before he went to Manchester United, was playing for Norwich. And Barnes, I think it was Mel, and Barnes' dribble up to him at the ball as he goes. And it's that one where he rolls the ball at the sole of his foot towards him and then drags it away. And he bit, and Barnes just went past him and that. And you thought it was outrageous. But those are sort of things he'd been doing in training and whatever. And he could do all these things because he's very, very talented. And it made life a lot easier for us because creatively he could do things. And it would shift some of the attention onto him, which would allow me that a little bit more freedom here every now and then to do something. And I think the other half of that question about how people can now move things forward to make sure it keeps moving forward, I think the recognition has to go to what has actually been already done. And I do find it offensive when people say, about kick it out and all of those, you put a T-shirt on for one day and then they don't realise that because of what these people have done with these T-shirts, which is why they're able to have less nonsense on the pitch and in football grounds that you get now. And that's why I'm going back to again, they need to recognise that. And it's up to them now in the position that they're in on all the things that they do to help move it forward, whatever way that they can do within their own communities where they live or where they come from and that sort of thing. That's their responsibility to do that, to move the thing forward. And every opportunity to tell people and speak to people, these people with the dissenting voices, that has got to be the way for them. And we've all got a part to play in that, because we all hear it. We all can have a voice in the right way. And it doesn't mean you have to slag people off to do it. You just have to say that sort of behaviour is not acceptable, because you yourself would not like somebody to be, when you're at work, to just shouting abuse at you because of your skin colour, because of your religion, because of your culture or whatever at that time. And that is the sort of thing that we need to keep reminding people.
So can we reflect on your England career, please? So on your debut, you score a hat-trick for England. Every schoolboy's dream, playing for your country and scoring a hat-trick. But how did that change the way that you played and the way that you interacted with other people? Because you've moved from Watford, where you're scoring goals on a regular basis, and then you moved into this England side with some absolute quality players. How did that change the way that you mentally dealt with the game, and how did you physically change your game?
I think the thing about when you go to England was, and it was fortunate that I got my opportunity there, but I think unfortunate in some ways, because I think from the 80s right the way through, England never really settled into a way that they wanted to play. It wasn't a way we set out and just stuck at it and worked it through to make it play. I thought England always tried to play the same game as the continental teams play. And our game has always been a high energy game, and that pressing and closing down game. And we never really did that. And you see teams doing it now, and people go, wow, isn't it amazing? But that is a sort of football that England always used to play at club level. And it's nothing greatly new in the game. Yes, now with all the scientific help, they have to do things. You can do it better because you can really target it where you need to. But it's nothing particularly new in the game, in my opinion. So England, and that saying, you hear it quite often that England are caught between two stools, whether they want to overplay and then they play long, because they overplay and then they got nowhere to go, then they play long, and that all that does is give the ball away. And I think that was the issue at the time with English football. And so when you joined, we were too slow always in the build-up. And you watch England now, when they're very slow with their build-up, even with the talent they have right the way through the team, they make the game more difficult for themselves. Yeah. So you have to play a little bit. You've got to take a book out of what Liverpool does and what Man City does, and a little bit what likes of Leicester and Chelsea and all of that. Man U, they all do things slightly different. It's all the best bits of those. If you can harness all that together, then you get the sort of way that I think English football would really flourish all the time. Play with that pace, and at times you have to be direct. And we've seen Liverpool, Man City, they've all done it at times where they've gone, and then suddenly they've opened you up at one pass. I remember England versus Italy, and we got beat in the end with that one. Yes, Pirlo was magnificent in midfield that day, but it was more to the fact that we got so worried about what they might do to us, we ended up defending on the edge of our box, which handed them the game in some respect. Because Italy were quite happy to play their usual stuff, but what they look for at Balotelli, they go, every now and then, what they do is they play that long ball in, which use the space in behind. And that, for me, is clever football, because you play in the manner what is needed at any particular stage of a game to win it. And that is something I think England are striving to be able to do at this moment in time.
So I totally agree what you're saying there. I do think we should be playing to our strengths internationally, rather than trying to play a sort of continental game. Do you think there's too much pressure on England to play a certain way, to play a way that the press or even supporters of teams like Manchester City and Chelsea and Liverpool expect the international side to play, or are all those expectations what we should be expecting?
Absolutely. You see, the thing is, and again, this was what Graham Taylor said, is that why would you? So if you're going in the boxing ring with Mike Tyson, if Mike Tyson is best, would you go in there and think, right, Mike Tyson likes to come at you? Would you go in there and try to do the same to Mike Tyson? You wouldn't fight Mike Tyson the way that Mike Tyson's fight, because he would last 10 seconds, you'd be done. And it's the same with football. Why play somebody at the game that they are very, very good at? You have to find a different way of playing them to get the better of them, take the edge of what they're doing, so you can apply and impose your way of playing on them. And that's what you always ever try and do when you play football, for me. And one of the terms that really, really gets my goat, annoys me, ticks me off, all those terrible things, is when people say, yeah, we play the game the right way. The right way is the way that you win. That is the right way. And that can change from game to game, from periods of the game to whatever. And so every time somebody, yeah, we play the game the right way, I'm thinking, that what is the right way? And just because you say it's the right way, so yeah, I've got that little bugbear at them.
So how did that affect you as a player, Luther? Because you've you're top goal scorer in Europe, won the Golden Boot. You're prolific at Watford, and you're now being asked to play a different way for England. How did that affect you?
Yeah, well, you're not going to get the way that you play that, because there's always slight variations in the way that everybody plays. But what you need to do, whichever way you set out to do, you need to play to the strengths of what you have in the team, because that is what you play towards. You make up whatever formation, whatever system, whatever tactic you do to suit the players that you have. And I think sometimes what coaches have done, they've gone, this is how we want to play, and put players into something which doesn't really fit them. And then you have an issue. Then you get those non-performances where it's not quite. So you have to adapt as a player to fit into whatever way the team is going to play to a degree. But they have to also adapt so that they can get the best out of you, because there's a reason why they have picked you to play in the team. And if they've picked you for a reason, then you have to play to that strength. You look at Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker has never been one to get involved in all the build-up mainly in games. Around that penalty area, that's when Gary Lineker comes alive. There's me for that. So that's how England played with Gary Lineker, and look at the success they had with that. And I think any team that scores, and I think a prime example, I watched Madrid play when Ronaldo was there, and they played for Ronaldo to score goals. That's why Ronaldo scores as many goals as he does, because they play. I've seen it where they played and they've opened people up and whatever, and whoever it is, they can put the ball in the back of the net themselves. But no, they go and they pull people out and they roll it in, and he goes and puts it in empty net. And that is how you play football. You play it to maximise the people in your team that can score goals, so they do that, because it frightens the life out of the opposition when they know you've got somebody in their team that scores lots of goals. Who do you spend all your week talking about when you're going to play anybody? How are you going to stop this person from scoring goals? And if you're having to spend that time to work on that, there are other things that they're going to not be so sharp on, which they can get done another way, and then you get done both ways. So you need to carry that real goal threat, and those players do that, and you need to play in a way that gives them more chance than not for them to do what they do very well.
So playing for England must have been must have been the pinnacle of your career. Can you just explain how that felt for you, and if you've got any advice for any up and coming players that want to play professional football or even for England?
My approach to the game was, and again, a conversation I had with Graham before I left on international duty, he just said to me, just play the way that you play for us, because that's why they picked you. So if the opportunity is there for you to run at people, do what you do here. You run at them. If there's a chance to shoot, shoot. That was his advice. Just try and do as much of your normal, natural game that you do. Just do it when you got there. And I would say the same to any of those players, because if they can impose themselves on the opposition with what they're doing, their teammates, being professionals themselves, will recognise that and think, tell you what, he's on fire today. Give him the ball in those areas, and they'll do more of that, because that's what talented players, they see that, and they will let you have more opportunities to do so. And for me, that was one of the most invaluable bits of information I ever had. In other words, just go and do things the way that you normally do. Don't change. And that's what you try to do. Because yes, you have to change it a little bit to fit in with what they're doing. But the fundamentals of what your game is all about, you should not in any way undermine that just for one game every 2 months or whatever it may be.
So that's the end of today's interview. Thank you very much, Luther. I've got two friends, both Watford fans, Dean and Luke. both ex-forces and work with me. Just wondering if you can give them a big shout out. I'm sure they'll thank me a lot if they got something from you.
Absolutely. Luke and Dean, hey, if you're Watford boys, and I know you are, I'm there for you guys. And hopefully come Remembrance Sunday, we can all remember everything, every sacrifice that you guys, as well as the ones that have gone before you, do for our safety and keeping all of us safe.
Well, that's it for today. Please like and subscribe my videos, and I will continue to try and give you as good a content as possible. Thank you. Bye.